Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm Councillor Chris Atwell, Chair of the Planning Committee. Limited public seating has been made available. However, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. The public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Some housekeeping. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square, and in order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. So the meeting will be live streamed and everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations today. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those, stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded. Can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they're finished, otherwise the camera will remain on you. If there is any voting, please can members keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated. Let's do some introductions. Members.
Good morning, Chair. John Smith, Eastney and Craneswater.
Thank you, John.
Linda Symes, Eastney and Craneswater.
Thank you, Linda.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hillsey Ward.
Thank you, Russell.
Hugh Mason, Councillor for St Jude Ward.
Thank you, Hugh.
Gerald Vernon Jackson, Councillor Milton Ward.
And thank you, Gerald. And officers?
Good morning, Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Thank you, Ian.
Alison Harper, Democratic Services.
Thank you, Alison.
Good morning, I'm Juliette Gill. I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor for Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you, Juliette. And if those giving deputations could introduce themselves.
Maisie Durran, on behalf of Carrie Ann Wells for Applecore PDM.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, that's all the introductions this morning. Are we okay? Has everybody got the SMATs and deputations? Yeah. Okay. I'll give you a couple of minutes to get those. While we're doing that, this is the last planning committee of the municipal year, so I'd like to extend my thanks to committee members for your work this year. Can I extend a particular thanks to Councillor Symes, who is standing down this year. I shall miss the tongue twister that is often the front row of Smythe, Symes and Smith, so I shall miss that, but we wish you well in the future, Linda. Okay, apologies. So we have some apologies from Councillor Sanders. Anybody else have any other apologies to give? No? Okay. Members, any declarations of interest for today's meeting? No? Okay, minutes of previous meetings. We've got two sets of minutes to agree or otherwise. Is everybody content? Linda? Yeah, okay. Seconded, Jim? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we move swiftly to today's substantive business. Item 4 on the agenda. Ian, you have a report for us.
Thank you, Chairman. We've brought a report to you to appraise members of recent appeal decisions called, in shorthand, the Lane decisions, because they're all from a single appellant, Mr. Lane. 3 properties affected: 123 Talbot Road, 28 Jesse Road and 56 Jesse Road, all in Southsea. I won't go through the report, which I believe covers all the key points that members need to be aware of. We've brought it to you today because it is a material consideration for similar applications, and indeed pretty much the entire agenda is such similar applications. 2 key messages from those appeals that officers would highlight for you so that you can bear those things in mind. First, the need to ensure all applications, while assessed on their individual merits, have due regard to previous appeal decisions on the same site, where weight should be given appropriately to pass judgments in the cases within the Lane decisions. Previous appeals have been dismissed on the technical concerns associated with the SPA, but the merit issue, the quality of the community living space, was found by previous inspectors to be acceptable. The committee was considered to give insufficient weight to that matter in reaching their determinations. We do have at least one application on today's agenda that similarly has been assessed for its merit and the quality of the living space by an inspector and found to be acceptable. So members will need to consider applying that good guidance and the right approach accordingly. The other key matter to highlight from these appeals is we can't sugar the pill, a scathing criticism of the quality of decision making associated with ensuring you do not have vague and generalised reasons for refusal. All of these appeals were heard in May 22, came to this committee in May 22, which was the first of these HMO committees dedicated for this purpose, and it was the first time a fairly stock phrase was utilised for members to seek to express their opinion as to why planning permission was required. That stock phrase is vague and generalised and should not be used. That is the criticism the inspector is levelling at this committee, at this council, and officers would therefore strongly advise members to ensure that when they judge the individual applications coming before you on today's agenda, specific and non-generalised reasons, both for the need for planning permission, if that exists, and the judgment as to the merit of a plan permission, if necessary, is applied, rather than generalised points that would be applicable across the board. That is unacceptable, and you will inevitably, especially in light of the guidance the Inspectorate has provided for you in these appeal decisions, have a significant cost awarded against you if that same approach is utilised. So officers would clearly guide you to avoid that approach. The costs were awarded against the Council in these three cases as well. These are the first three cases that have tackled the question that this committee has been vexed by, whether or not plan permission is needed for change of use between a 6-bed HMO and a 7-bed HMO, and has categorically agreed on the merits of these three cases. They were below the threshold that we define as material. Changes of use and plan permission was not needed for the change of use in each one of these 6-bed HMOs to a 7-bed HMO. So again, members, you need to give general weight to that material consideration of a relevant appeal decision within the city. Obviously happy to take any questions, but it's brought for you as an information item to explain those points, and I trust, of course, the members have read the report in full before today.
Thank you, Ian. Members, thoughts, comments on the report? Councillor Bowden-Jackson.
Ian, could you go through? I understand that there have been 3 appeals where the issue of whether this planning permission is needed have been looked at. The paper also says there are 26 that have occurred in the same period where the inspector did not comment on that. Is that correct?
Paragraph 3.5 covers that, yes. 26 appeals since the Campbell property decisions in 2021.
So in those 26 appeal decisions, the inspector took the view that planning permission was needed because they made a decision on it?
No. They either said nothing or made an express view that they were not giving an opinion on the matter.
Okay, so can you divide those 26 up into how many of them took a view and how many didn't?
No, I can't.
Is it half and half?
I have no idea. I'd have to
okay, so
read
we
all
must,
26 appeals.
Okay,
yeah.
so the paper says in 26 cases, the inspector did not turn it down because it didn't need planning permission. So that's the vast majority and needs to be weighed against the 3 where they did. So I think that's a hugely important part of this in terms of looking at where we should be going. Secondly, Ian, if you're saying that you are unhappy with the form of words that the committee has been using, can you produce a form of words which you think is better and more accurate that would help us in our considerations?
To unpick those issues, just to be absolutely clear, it's not 26 one way, 3 the other. That's an entirely misinterpretation of the information that's been shared. The inspectorate have the privilege from where they sit and the structure of how they can do their decisions to avoid certain things. It is, in the opinion of your legal and planning advisors, a dereliction of their duty to avoid it in these cases, and we can in no way encourage or support you to be similarly derelict to avoid answering the question, is planning permission needed? Do they have a fallback to do this work without planning permission? Those 26 inspectors that have either expressly or implicitly dodged that question are fundamentally failing in their legal duty in the advice of your officers and legal advisors. So I would strongly urge you to not do that. And indeed, it is by doing that that you've been found to be unreasonable and had costs awarded against you by the same inspectorate. Certainly an inconsistent bit of management by the inspectorate there. But as I say, no inconsistency in the merit judgment, because we've got 26 who haven't tackled the question and only, well, we're up to half a dozen cases, the Campbell property appeal decisions and the Lane appeal decisions that have tackled the question. To the form of wording, no, I can't provide you a generalised form of wording. That's the point. It's a case-specific question. When we get to today's agenda, you will see that there are, in fact, 3, if you refer to the SMAT, apologies there, cases where a change from one form of HMO to another form of HMO is considered by officers to be a material change of use. And each of those cases are changed from a 5-bed HMO to an 8-bed HMO. And within that report, we've expressed that reasoning as to why the change in occupancy from 5 occupants to 8 occupants in an HMO is deemed to be a material change of use that requires planning permission. One of those is certificate of lawfulness, the other 2 are applications. So that will give you an example of how the application of assessment and rigour can be applied to make a judgment. It does not apply, in officers' professional opinion, in any of the circumstances we have on today's agenda, by increasing occupancy only by 1 or 2. We have a number of 6 to 7-bed occupancy changes, an increase of 1, and we have one example of a 5 to 7-bed occupancy change, an increase of 2. Neither of those circumstances are considered to result in a material change of use, whereas the 3 cases which are seeking a 5 to 8-bed occupancy change are, on their own individual merits, considered to be a change of use. But this isn't a matter of a different set of wording, it's an actual assessment of the change in the nature of the accommodation and the attributes of the 2 different occupancies between the previous last lawful occupation, a 5-bed HMO in these cases, and the proposed lawful occupation, an 8-bed HMO.
Sorry, I have lots more questions, I'm sorry to hear. In paragraph 3.2, over on page 4, it says paragraph 8 of the appeal decision says in all 3 cases the increased occupancy has not involved any external alterations to the properties. And that is a reason for not looking for planning permission. Therefore, by definition, if there are external changes, that would then mean that this appeal decision doesn't affect it. Is that correct?
No, this appeal decision is a material consideration whenever the same matter is judged. It's of no use to you judging whether or not planning permission is needed for material operational works, changes to appearance. That's a separate judgment, so it has no particular relevance. But in, for example, a number of cases we have today where works have been carried out to extend and alter a building, that is a piece of development, and then there's an application in front of you today to change the use of that building. That is potentially another piece of development. That works to alter the building, to alter its appearance and size. In each case you have before you where that does occur, that development has been permitted as permitted development under a general development order, the GPDO. So that does need plan permission. That's not up for debate, but it already has its plan permission by virtue of the general permitted development order. The question of whether something needs plan permission after that is, having done the lawful works to alter the building, now changing the use of that building, does that need plan permission? And we have some examples, 5 to 8s, where it does, and some examples, 6 to 7s, where it does not.
I'm sorry, that's not what this says at all. This says, and the words are very clear, and that has not involved any external alterations. It doesn't say any external alterations which needed planning permission. It says any external alterations. So that clearly means no external alterations, because that's what the words say. Therefore, anything that does, whether needs external alterations, clearly is not covered by this.
That's just a fundamental misunderstanding, if I may, Chair. The sentence reads in full, in all three cases, so the specific of these three cases, the increased occupancy has not involved any external alteration to the properties, nor indeed a material change of use that would require plan permission. The two unrelated and separate tests. One, if it had external alterations, they might have needed plan permission. If it had a change in occupancy that was material, it might need a plan permission. You can't conflate the two issues. You're arguing two totally different points.
Ian, I completely agree.
You clearly do
Absolutely
not.
agree.
Okay,
Because it's...
Gerald, hang on, I'm going to get this
All
gets
right.
legalised, otherwise we're going to get into a conversation between the two of you. Juliet.
The starting point for determining a planning application is it development. Now that's set out in section 55 of the Town and Country Planning Act. That has two separate parts, one about operational development and one about the change of use. Now the change of use is the one that we need to look at for these applications.
Does that help?
No, we're in exactly the same place as we've always been, and the committee has always taken a unanimous view that a change of use of something that's got planning permission for up to 6 people, going above 6 people, by clear logic, has to be planning permission. And I hope the committee keeps to that view, because it is clear and obvious that that's what the English language says it should be. But it may be that other people don't speak English.
Members, any other thoughts on the report before we attempt to make some progress?
I've got a whole series more questions.
Have you?
Yes.
Go on then.
Well, no, I think it's a useful discussion to have about this, and I think there are a couple of things that would be very helpful for us for the future. So I would find it useful to have a report to this committee to inform the work on the next local plan on 2 particular things. The first is a policy that would ban the increase of size of all HMOs above 6 across the whole city. And the second would be to reduce the threshold across the city to 5% from 10%, for us to be able to look, not necessary to make that decision, but not.
Sorry,
but
sorry, Gerald, to interrupt. But, you know, we're not a theatre. It's not the bodyguard. I don't want to have to remove anybody from the. I know, but we don't have contributions from the public gallery, unfortunately. So if you could, you know, just keep a little bit quiet.
It may well be that the advice that we get would be that we cannot do those things. That legally there is no power to do that. But I think it would be incredibly helpful for all members to have a paper to look at those options, because we're regularly asked to do those things, but have papers to come to us that say whether that is an option that could go forward in the local plan that's being developed. It may well be that the papers recommendation that come forward say that it's not legally possible to do those things and we cannot do them, but that's really helpful for all members to have had that, to be able to inform their decision, and when the local plan comes up, so that we've had a paper on those things that are likely to be a really important part of the discussion about the local plan. So I'm not trying to prejudge the issue. What I'm wanting to do is to have a paper that sets out the options that are available. And there may be no options, but at least that's come to us to be looked at.
Well, that's, Ian, you'll have a view on
So that paper was produced in May last year at your request, and the members debated it at that point. It also formed the background papers to a workshop. 3 weeks ago for members, where all members were invited at your request to debate the HMO policy and the emerging local plan. This planning committee has no locus to policy making. It's not within the constitution of this planning committee, so the paper wouldn't come here. I mean, I can reissue the paper again from May that looked at all of the options available to what members could look at in an HMO policy, and as I say, that was discussed by members through a working group that will be fed back to the portfolio holder, who has the role of policy formation over the next few months.
So we've used this committee as, because we do people who do planning, as an informal sounding ground. Can we do it for that?
It's entirely up to the portfolio how he wishes to sound these issues out.
Okay.
We took a report to the portfolio holders' decision meeting some months ago to specifically ask and confirm, in line with the Constitution, how that sounding out on all policy matters would be occurred, and the decision was made there to put forward a series of workshops which have occurred, so that officers could take the appropriate instructions from the portfolio holder to be working on these policies through this PERDA period and into next municipal year. So yes, in previous years, I'll look at Councillor Mason when I say this. When Councillor Mason was chair of the planning committee, you may recall this committee was reconstituted as a working group at the end of certain committee meetings. So it wasn't the committee sitting because they have no role in policy making, but because they are a series of interested members in every sense of the word, they were reconstituted as a working group. That was one of the options that you could have looked at as an administration for policy formation. The option that was taken forward was a all-party, all-member workshop approach, which has recently been completed.
Okay. So, and of course, you know, there will be a different committee in a few weeks' time who may have other views. Okay. Members, if you're happy to continue with today's business, we will move on to Hudson Road. Ian, over to you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Horton's joined us. You're giving a couple of deputations today.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit late, Councillor Atwell. I'm here to speak on, I think it's 7 and 8.
Okay, thank you.
The IT is cooperating, thank you. So the first substantive item in today's agenda is the return of 14 Hudson Road. Members will recall this item was deferred from the May 22 committee to undertake a site visit. There were a number of challenges to get that site visit organised. It was undertaken on the 17th of March this year, attended by a group of members. The application report is unaltered to that presented in May. A few things just to pick out to highlight for members' information. This is that example where a previous inspector found the living conditions to be acceptable for 7 people. So members will need to give due regard to that fact. Your own private sector housing team, I should say, also has found this to be an acceptable HMO for 7 people. It's been licensed as such since the 10th of June 2021. It meets all your space standards in your SPD, but it is in an area that is already substantially made up of HMOs, with 61.4% of dwellings in the appropriately defined area being HMOs at this time. When it came in 22, there were works still done to enlarge and alter the building. All those works have now been completed on site. I think the presentation is probably largely unchanged as well from last time. So, as I say, as you can see from the star map there, lots of HMOs in the area. The usual circumstance where works have been done to under permitted development to extend to the rear and to the roof, and a ground floor lounge is being converted into the 7th bedroom. In this case, a number of the rooms are over 10 metres, but a number are under 10 metres, therefore requiring the larger of the combined living space standards that you describe in your SPD, 34 square metres, which this does provide. Consequently, it is fully compliant with policy. However, it is a change of use from 6 to 7 bed, a change of use that is not considered by officers or indeed the planning inspectorate to be material. in similar circumstances, and thus they have a fallback position of being able to occupy it, as indeed they may well have done already, for 7 people without the need for planning permission from this committee. An application has, however, been made, and therefore it falls for you to determine it, and on that basis an unconditional permission is recommended in the same outcome as the Lane appeal decisions had on materially similar circumstances. Just draw your attention to the SMAT, and I can advise members I'm going to be saying the same thing, if I can remember to, on each and every one of the applications. We will be tidying up the application descriptions, and this will be a universal thing that the validation team is doing for all HMOs going forward from now. I think some of the use classes order has caused more confusion than benefit because it has limited applicability to such applications. So the description should correctly read a change of use from a 6-bed, 6-person HMO to a 7-bed, 7-person HMO, because that is what is being applied for. It's currently a 6-bed, 6-person HMO, and will alter on that basis to become a 7-bed, 7-person HMO. So adding the use classes order into there is of little benefit, and in fact can cause, as I say, more confusion. So we will be looking to amend the description as part of issuing any decision reached by this committee today. I think I've got a couple of images, internal images. As I say, the work has now been done to the property, as you can see, fitted out as you would expect to see for an HMO. That's probably all I need to cover. Happy to answer any questions, of course.
Thank you, Ian. We have a deputation on behalf of the agent. Maisie, over to you.
I know due to recent allowed appeal decisions Applecore submitted on behalf of Mr Lane, there is now further question on whether an increase of 1 or 2 persons to an existing 6-bedroom HMO is a material change and therefore if planning is actually required. The deputations prepared today have been made on the basis that members will disagree with this outcome and was the situation after the Campbell appeal decisions. If members are to agree with the advice of officers that this increase is not a material change, then this should apply to all the applications I represent today, and further clarity and confirmation over size standards may not be needed. As you all know, at Applecore, we are passionate about providing high-quality shared homes. We have an ever-growing reputation for high-end design HMOs for both students and young professionals. As you'll be aware, Portsmouth size standards for HMOs demand some of the largest in the UK, and at Applecore we strive to exceed that. During recent years, Applecore has led the way in terms of designing high-quality HMOs accommodation within the city. The increase in quality HMOs is in part due to high standards introduced by the members of this planning committee, and also in part due to some of the clients I represent today who share our passion for high-end shared living, which has only served to drive up the standards within the city. Portsmouth City Council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year land supply, therefore presumption should be in favour of the development. Although the contribution is small, all of these applications today would add towards that shortfall. There is a huge need in the city for high-end quality shared housing. With a limited potential to build in such densely populated city, HMOs could offer much needed homes for those in need. There has been growing demand for HMO accommodation within Portsmouth for young professionals who cannot afford to get on the property ladder, for which HMOs are an ideal solution for an all bills included opportunity for independent living. I would also like to again extend you to an invitation to see the selection of HMO properties so you can fully appreciate the time and effort and cost our client puts into these properties, and fully appreciate why it would not be in the interest of any clients to leave the property poorly managed and not maintained. There was a site visit arranged on Hudson Road recently which was very poorly attended. This particular property was a student HMO and mid-term. I feel it would be beneficial for the members to see a typical HMO for a professional let. I won't repeat this information for all applications and will instead remain property specific for each application. However, I ask that you consider this information equally to all of the applications I represent today. For 14 Hudson Road, the application is for a change of use from a Class C4 house into a multiple occupation to a 7-person house in multiple occupation. This application complies with policy PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan, and also complies with the Houses in Multiple Occupations Supplementary Planning Document 2019. The property provides 7 ensuite bedrooms in excess of the 6.5 square metre requirement. As 4 of the bedrooms are under 10 square metres, the property provides 34.02 square metre communal area at the ground floor. This meets the required space standards. In addition to requirement, the property also benefits from ensuite shower rooms to all of the bedrooms. As you will be aware, this application has been to appeal previously and dismissed on nitrates only. This was also the same for the Lane appeal decisions. To refuse this again would likely result in the same outcome as that in the Lane decisions, and the applicant is likely to have costs awarded. The planning officer has recommended this fully compliant application for approval today, and I ask you all to fully support this recommendation and save the time and cost involved in taking this to appeal for a second time. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I don't know if anybody who went on the site visit would like to... Yes, indeed. But we'll have questions first, unless you want to make your comments into a question. But we'll do questions first. Councillor Mason.
Paragraph 111, the inspector turned down the appeal on the grounds that it was in conflict with the development plan and it also in conflict with the habitat regulations. Could the officer please inform us of what actions have been taken to rectify both of those considerations?
Yes, it's the same consideration. Both the development and the habitat regulations require the same output to manage the adverse impact on the SPA. The applicant has confirmed that they are, if necessary, willing to enter into a Section 106 agreement or Section 111 agreement. Different legal agreements are available to resolve those harms. However, as we detail in the report, if in accordance with officer recommendation the plan permission is not required, then that conflict is removed. That's not something that the 2019, was it, appeal, or 2010 I think, appeal inspector looked at to resolve. He was one of those inspectors that avoided that question, so that would become a moot point in that judgment. However, if committee do come up with a specific reason why plan permission is required in this case, then an appropriate legal agreement will be entered into to resolve and overcome that previous conflict with the habitat regulations and development plan.
So basically, on the assumption that planning permission is required for this, there is nothing in the habitat regulations or the plan which would lead us to turn it down.
As the applicant has confirmed their willingness to enter into a scheme of mitigation, no, there is not.
We'll get to the question around whether we believe this requires plan permission in a second. Let's just see where we go with the questions. Anybody else? Questions on this application? No? Comments? Russell?
As someone actually viewed it, there were a few concerns that I had in general. Firstly, there was no bike storage I like to call it an alleyway because it was very, very slim and there wasn't a lot of room out there at all actually. Even to the rear of the building, it was about a metre, but if you want to sit outside, the options are not really there. But the bike storage wasn't there, which I believe it should be there. And also bedroom one's a bit of a concern, which is the very top floor. Essentially, if you're over 5'5", you're going to have some issues for half of that room. I saw that the bed was under it, most likely because there was no other room to put that bed. And I do feel that should be a consideration, that the only place you can put it is underneath where the ceiling drops, because the door that opens out into the ensuite, and I don't feel that's been considered whatsoever. Those were my concerns when I saw it. The other rooms were nice. I'm not going to give it all down. It was nicely renovated. However, those were my concerns. And we have seen many applications like this, and I wonder if that's the same as well, and if we should consider that for every single application too.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Thank you. I went on the site visit, and it was a good property that had been clearly well converted. And I think our job is to try to make sure that we recognise when things have been done well and recognise when things are not going to be done well, and therefore if it's been done well, I don't see a problem of supporting planning permission for this at all, and I'd be happy to propose that. But I do think it is clear as part of that the committee also needs the words to say that we do think it needs planning permission, but that I'm very happy to propose that it does get planning permission.
John, yeah, any other comments on the site visit?
I did the site visit as well, and I thought overall the standard of accommodation was very good, and I did make comment about the bike store as well, actually, that I didn't see that on the plan that I had on the day. So that was the only comment I'd make. It was a narrow down the side, and there was on the plan, it says there was going to be a bike store. There wasn't one. Other than that, I thought the accommodation was very good standard.
Okay, thank you. Well, so we're back to our question. So we believe that the property requires planning permission?
Yes, it's clear it does need planning permission to go from 6 people upwards. Therefore, I'd suggest that we use the standard set of words that we have used, that I've got them to hand.
Well, so we're now at the number of today's meeting around non-vague or non-generalised words.
Which is where I think the wording that we've had before has been very helpful.
Any other thoughts?
I'd propose it as it is, without the set of words.
Okay, Juliet?
Sorry, I just wanted clarification. You're proposing that it is as per the officer's recommendation. Okay.
We've got a proposer and a seconder for that. Anybody else?
So just for the rest, so can I just be clear? If that is going to go through, we are therefore saying as a committee that no HMOs that want to expand above 6 need planning permission. Is that correct?
If I can assist, Chair, no, that is not correct. You are
Okay,
judging
that's
an
helpful.
individual application on its
Okay.
own merits.
All right.
So for 14 Hudson Road, we have a proposer and a seconder to move the officers.
And I'd like to put an amendment to say that it does need planning permission, but that I'm happy to propose that it gets planning permission.
Okay, can we do that?
Could you, Julia, could you, if my...
Sorry, I thought I'd put it on. The first proposal was from Councillor Vernon Jackson, but we haven't actually got proper reasons for it. So I would go to the other proposal.
Juliet, could you get,
Unless
from
you
the
could
minutes of the last one, could you read out the reasons given?
Councillor Vernon Jackson, you've been advised that we are not to use the standard vague wording that has been used before. Ian Maguire has made that very clear.
Therefore, in which case I will then add the words that clearly planning permission is required because the planning permission that it currently has is limiting it to 6 persons, and this is for more than 6 persons, so it clearly needs planning permission as the previous planning permission does not apply.
That is not a reason.
It may be not in your view, Juliet, but in the English language it clearly is.
Can we do it or can't?
No, that's not a planning reason that can go forward. I don't know if Ian Maguire would like to step in and say anything.
So I've asked Juliet for either the previous wording that we've used, which you've not provided. I've asked for an alternative set of words which people have not provided. So if in that case, then I am left with what I can provide, and that is what I'm doing. I'm very happy if you're going to come back and give us the previous wording, and I'm happy to use that.
Chair, it's not my role
Yeah,
to
no,
come up
so-
with the wording for a
Okay,
overturn of an officer's recommendation. The reasons would need to come from the committee themselves.
do we want to take a few
Yeah.
minutes to think about? Yes?
Okay.
The wordings we used?
So
It's
can we
going to
have
be
a
long day, isn't it?
15-minute adjournment to go and research that?
We'll come back at 11:30. Okay? Alison, if we could stop the live stream.